What's up? Today I want to talk about letting go of your dreams. Kind of going through it right now. And nobody in my real life wants to hear about this, so I'm forcing you to listen to me instead. Recently, I had to let go of a dream that I'd had for about 10 years. It was something that I really wanted, but I had an epiphany, and I decided to be honest with myself for once. And I came to the realization that this dream I had was slowly turning into a nightmare, and that sometimes it is good to let go of your dreams, and it's okay. And so I just want to talk about it. So let me take you back. Started in middle school. Middle school I wanted to be an astronaut, and it wasn't just like a vague, I want to be an astronaut. No, I came up with a fucking plan. I was like, first I'm gonna join, I'm gonna go to RMC, which is the Royal Military College. I was like, I'm gonna join the military and become a pilot. I'm gonna get like a physics or engineering degree. Then, I was gonna be a pilot for a few years, and then something was gonna happen, and then I'd go to astronaut tryouts, and then become an astronaut. That was the vague goal. I think that's pretty solid. I got the initial stages at least planned out. Then in grade 9, I had a health issue that basically shattered that dream. But that dream was still in its infancy, so it was fine. I decided to be an astrophysicist, which is actually where my name comes from. My original channel name was Astrophysician, and I changed it to spacetypo. But I was going to be an astrophysicist. Now the problem is that I have struggled with the sciences and with math my entire life. Like, it has always been my weak point. The first time I got a C was in grade 5 science. I still remember that because it felt trash, because I had always been decent in school. It has been a BA kind of student. But, that was the first time that I got kind of a shitty grade, and I always struggled. It was to the point that I remember in grade 11, my math teacher pulled me aside one day. He told me in the nicest way possible that everybody else's grades were in the class average was like B plus A minus, and that's where most kids were at, but there were like 4 weak students, and the other 3 students were like B minus, C plus, C range. I was getting D's, okay? Like, when I say I'm bad at math, I mean I am bad at math. Like, I don't understand physics. If you give me a high school calculus test, I'd probably fail it or just barely pass. It took me 3 tries to get through university calculus. I failed the first time, quit halfway through the second time, and the third time I did the easier version of the course, and I still got a D minus. And I think there was a constellation, pun intended, of reasons why I stuck by this dream nonetheless. Part of it I think was just the fact that my guidance counselor and, my parents were like, you should do arts, you should do languages, this is what you're good at. And, as a teenager, you're kind of a defiant little shit. And I was like, no, don't fucking tell me what to do, So I was like, I just wanted to prove them wrong, basically, and just be like, no, I'm gonna do this. They were supportive, but they kept nagging at me, and it really annoyed me. So that definitely solidified my no, fuck you position. Another thing, I'm not really pointing fingers here because it was obviously a personal choice, but at the same time, I do think that environmental factors can really affect you, especially when you're younger. Another thing is that at the time, I was a hardcore feminist, and, during the 2013-2017 era, there was a very strong push for girls to go into STEM. And so I felt like if I didn't go into STEM and I didn't see this through, that I would be a bad feminist. That was definitely an attitude I had in high school. That didn't continue after I left high school, because then I stopped, agreeing with a lot of feminist talking points and identifying as a feminist, you could say. But that was definitely the vibe in high school. It was definitely a portion. The other thing that I think is probably the biggest contributing factor was the fact that, first of all, I was in IB. I was in the International Baccalaureate program, and I did IB Physics. And IB Physics, there's HL and SL. I was in SL Math, by the way. I was in the easy math. But in HL Physics, there was this kind of attitude, specifically amongst the physics students, that was very much like, if you don't go into STEM, then you're gonna fail. Then you're never gonna have a job, you're never gonna do anything. And I think that our society does reflect that. Like, there's a lot of hate towards the arts. You know, if you're not useful to society, then you're worthless, is kind of the idea that I think is very pervasive in this day and age. That is an idea that was kind of implanted in my brain for a long time. And another part of that was just my genuine love for the stars. You know, I genuinely love space. I love learning about space-time. The philosophy of science and of physics is super interesting to me. You know, like, I thrive when I learn about stars and that kind of shit, you know? And so I do genuinely love space. But I felt this need to, in a way, like, professionalize my interest. It has the same vibe as there's this, like, weird idea that I think is kind of going on right now, that you have to monetize your hobbies. You know, like, I don't know, there's just this, I don't know, maybe other people don't feel this or see this, but I see this happening a lot, is that there's this pressure to monetize your hobbies. Like, you can't make a fucking drawing without somebody being like, you should sell that. And so I had this dream to become an astrophysicist, despite my struggles with math and science. Like, you know, I cannot stress enough how bad I am at math. Like, I am shook when people at the cash register are able to just do the mental math and, like, get the change out. Like, how the fuck do cashiers do mental math that fast? You know, after high school, I got my IB diploma, and I got into my first choice university, which was really great. My GPA was overall kind of dragged down by my my science and maths, but you know, I did okay. You know, overall, I mean, I did get into my first choice university overall, so it's like, it's fine. You know, I got where I had to go. And I'm really lucky that my school, Queen's, is very much a, their first year, if you're in art sci, which is kind of the biggest general program they have, the first year is general. You don't have to declare your major until your second year. So I took a bunch of courses. I took a calculus class, which I mentioned earlier, I failed. I took algebra, which I dropped out halfway through. I did chemistry, which I failed. I did physics, which I got an okay grade on, and I did philosophy, which was my best grade, but my best grade was B+, so that's kind of a sign. I was going through some shit, okay? Like, not only was I like trying to do things that are my weakness and that made me miserable, but I didn't want to admit to myself were making me miserable. I was kind of killing everything mentally. You know, I wasn't even able to enjoy philosophy that much. And I ended up declaring my major as philosophy because that was the only thing that I was good at. In the end, it was the right call. You know, I love philosophy, and I'm glad that that's my major. But, you know, I decided to keep up with the physics and decided to make it my minor. But the reason that I decided to make it my minor was because, and why I didn't end up pursuing a physics major, and astrophysics specifically, which is really difficult. I was going to go into an astrophysics specialization. But what happened is, well, my prof was an astrophysicist, and I was like, you know, I emailed him and I was like, bro, what's it like being an astrophysicist? Are there any labs that I could maybe see? Like, I know this is asking a lot, but maybe is there something? Like, what's it like? And he was a super chill guy. He said, you know, there's literally a lab in the basement of Sterling, which was really cool. I got to see some undergrad students working. But as soon as I scanned the room and saw what they were doing, I had this, I think this was my first major breakthrough moment, that I thought, I don't want to be stuck in a lab staring at a computer with numbers that I'll probably never understand. At first I tried to convince myself and say like, oh yeah, I'm just like, this is inspiring and I'm gonna work really hard. But in the end, you know, I was honest with myself when it came time to, like, choose my major and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna stick with a physics minor, I mean. And I was gonna do a physics arts minor, which is the easiest possible minor you can do. My dream at this point had gone from being an astronaut to becoming an astrophysicist, to becoming, to just getting a physics minor. That was my plan, was to get a philosophy major and then do all the stars and shit courses. You know, I had no interest in doing any of the other stuff. I was like, I'm just gonna do the stars and learn about the stars and all that stuff. And I did an introduction to astrophysics class, and I really loved that class. That class was great, and it's only now in hindsight that I can see why I liked it so much. And that was because it was very concept-based. Like, there was the homework that I hated, because it was all equations and like the math side of things. But then during a lot of the tests, or like a huge portion of the tests, was all concepts. Like it was like, describe the life of a star. How are galaxies formed? Explain these like details. What are the types of galaxies? How are black holes formed? What's a supernova? What are the types of supernovas? You know, all of these like concept-based questions that I did super well at. I understood that shit perfectly. I loved it. It was my element. But all of the math sucked. But I took that as a sign that I was like, great, I can do this astrophysics thing. I can get this physics minor while doing all of the space shit. And so then I did a 300 level astrophysics class. And that went fucking horribly. I failed that class, like, just so hard. I failed it so badly. You know, it was a complete mess. And I think that that's kind of when I had like that was my another breakthrough. I think that was probably my biggest breakthrough, where I had to admit to myself that I liked the idea of astrophysics more than I liked actual astrophysics. And that's when I really realized, like, you can, well, it's only this, like, recently that I found out that, you know, and I internalized the message that you can just enjoy things. You don't have to monetize your hobbies, you don't have to share them, and you don't need to, I'm going to say, professionalize things. Like, if you have an interest for, in my case, you know, physics, you don't have to make that into your minor. You can just read books about physics, learn physics facts. You don't have to know all of the complicated stuff behind it if it makes you miserable. But it was really just like 2 weeks ago. It's still kind of the beginning-ish of the semester, kind of. We're like a quarter of the way through. We're a third of the way through. We're a third of the way through the semester. What the fuck? I told myself, if I notice myself falling back into my old patterns, I'm just gonna quit. I'm just gonna drop the class and not look back. You know, I'm in a bit of a weird, precarious position right now because I have only 2 more credits to do to get my minor. I have to just sit through 2 more classes, and then I have a physics minor, and that's great. But at the same time, I'm like, what is the fucking point if I'm just going to be tortured the entire time? University is supposed to be stuff that you're enjoying. You're supposed to enjoy things. You know, obviously there's mandatory classes that you're not going to like, and that's fine. But like, especially when you're an upper year student, or you're not taking mandatory classes, or even for general things, you know, in life that you don't have to do, and that are optional, you know, why am I torturing myself? Like, what is the point? So yeah, you know, I ended up falling back into my old habits. So when I say old habits, I mean like self-sabotage and stuff like that, and like half-assing assignments and not bothering doing the readings, or just barely paying attention in class, that kind of thing. But I noticed, you know, I handed in that first assignment, and I had only handed in half of it, because I didn't fucking understand what was going on. I looked at the first question, and it was, if you drop a potato from the top of Stirling, what is the impact velocity? And I immediately started overthinking it. And it's not a hard question. It's the beginning of the semester. And I was like, I don't fucking understand the question. I don't understand this basic-ass physics question that you should be able to answer from high school physics. This is literally high school, like, revision physics. And so I just said, yeah, fuck this. This is not worth it. It is not worth all of this stress and being upset all the time. And, you know, it was getting to the point that, like, every time I opened a physics book, I just felt annoyance and dread. And every time I had to go onto the site to, like, look at the assignments and stuff like that, I just didn't, I was hating it. I was like, wow, I fucking hate physics. Like, I can say that now. I fucking hate doing the math of physics. I like stars. I love learning about space. I love, you know, reading about space-time. I love the concept of the philosophy of space. The philosophy of time is so fucking fascinating, by the way. I love all of this shit. But I don't give a fuck about math. And that feels so good to say. To just say, I am bad at math. Math does not make sense to me. It's like if you take 2 magnets and you try to force them together and they don't want to go together. That's what my brain is like on math. It's like, Imagine dyslexia, but for math. That's what it's like for me. And I feel so good no longer having to struggle with it, and that now I can just enjoy it passively. Now, one important concept here that really is, it's a tough one to swallow, but it's really important, especially if you're in a similar position to me, is the concept of the sunk cost fallacy. The sunk cost fallacy has been defined here as individuals commit the sunk cost fallacy when they continue a behavior or endeavor as a result of previously invested resources, time, money, or effort. This fallacy, which is related to loss aversion and status quo bias, can be viewed as bias resulting from an ongoing commitment. So to me that was definitely true in terms of the time, money, and effort. I've spent hundreds of hours trying to understand the math behind this and the physics behind this, and so many emails trying to, emailing profs or tutors and understanding this, thousands of dollars down the drain from failing classes. Not to mention that, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm only 2 credits away. Like, why don't I just stick with this? But again, the point is, like, what is the point? Like, I'm not gonna do this in the future. I'm not gonna become a physicist. It's dragging my GPA down. Assuming that I'm still gonna somehow make it into grad school at this point, with the trash GPA that I have. It's making me miserable. I hate opening my physics textbook. What is the point? Even the topic that I thought I was interested in, like as soon as I got to a higher level of it, being with that Astrophysics 300 course, I was miserable and I failed it anyways. And so I realized, that I was committing a classic sunk cost fallacy. It was like, I've committed so much time, money, and effort into this. I have to see it through to the end. But the reality is, no, you don't. If something is making you miserable, you only have one life. Even if you've spent, money and time and effort doing this thing, if it's making you feel like shit, don't waste another second on it. Obviously, it varies from case to case, and it's not like a hard and fast rule. But it's definitely something to take into consideration, especially, remind yourself, like, you only have one life, make the best of it, at the very least. So there's this painting that I came across recently, called The Deluge by D.D. McInnes. And it's a painting of a little mouse in a teacup, although I like to think of it as a gerbil, but it's a little mouse in a teacup paddling with a spoon. The water is dark. The sky is so dark there's no stars or moon, there's nothing, it's just pure blackness all around. To me this could signify the unknown, if you will, or uncertainty, whatever. And for the longest time, I felt like a little mouse in a teacup. Actually, for most of the time, I feel like a mouse without a teacup at all. And I think everybody feels like that at some point. Maybe some people feel it more than others. Some people are in that state for a very long time. Some people only experience it briefly. It obviously depends on the person, but I think everyone feels like a mouse in a teacup, surrounded by the dark and uncertainty and unknown. As soon as I let go of this physics dream, and I let go of this idea of a physics minor, and I let go of this concept of having to force myself to do something that I'm so unhappy with, and that's making me miserable, I felt like I was no longer a little mouse in a teacup in the sea of the unknown. I felt like I was a little mouse in a teacup in the sea of the unknown, but with a spoon. At least now I feel like I can pick a direction and start paddling. I don't know where I'm gonna go. I don't know what's gonna happen. But at least now I have a little spoon and I can just pick a direction and start going. And that to me feels like a form of freedom, as cheesy as it is. And maybe you're at that point in your life and you need to just be honest with yourself and just think, maybe there's something that you really like that you just maybe have convinced yourself that you like. Maybe you don't actually like it and you know it deep down, but you just need that final push. Maybe you just need to make that leap and just say, yeah, this is hurting me. Fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe that's a relationship that's toxic, or maybe it's a degree. Maybe it's a job that, is truly hurting you more than it's helping you. Obviously, it depends on your financial situation and stuff like that. But, you make the right judgment call. I know this is a weirdly small spoon, but here is your spoon. Start paddling. Yeah, that's the end of my video. I don't really have any other parting words. So, peace. By the way, this is my 69th video, so nice.